Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs-show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs-show.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 inch tall. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus that runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week we have Derek Parry. Derek is the founder and executive director at Code 180. Listeners of the show have heard us talk a little bit about Code 180. I'm on the advisory board for their team, and basically what they do is train non-technical people on technical skills, primarily the fundamentals of web development and computer programming in 180-minute blocks. So it's a really cool program for people who may not have a traditional background in web programming or any other computer science type background, and a way for them to get sort of brought up to speed quickly in just this 180 minutes. It's a really cool program. Both Mike and I have actually taken the course, which has been really cool. And Derek and I have had a number of great conversations about the product, and we're really excited to talk about it. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce Derek Parry. Hey, Derek. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
So let's I guess begin by talking a little bit about your background, where Code 180 came from, but maybe in order for us to understand that, it would make sense to understand the rest of your background.
Yeah, so personally, my background, I grew up in Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Okay. Our neck of the woods.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Went to BYU Idaho, studied music there with the plan that I'd either go to law school or business school after that, and decided to go to law school.
So you went to Snow College before that, right?
Yeah, so I started at Snow College.
Where is Snow?
It's down in Ephraim, Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it before. Your emphasis was in jazz, right?
Yes.
What instrument?
That's right, drum set.
Drum set.
Yeah, so I did drums and percussion.
Oh, yeah. So did you hold the sticks sideways or like
but
you always know that like the jazz or those drummers they got the technique with the holding them not like a rock star.
right. Yeah, so you have the match grip and the traditional grip. Yeah, so I hold them both ways. Yeah.
Cool. So is that was your focus was jazz studies, and then you transferred to BYU Idaho and continued drumming?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, continued with studying music there, and the reason why I majored in music was I was planning on either business school or law school, and
because that fits, right? I mean, music and law school. I mean,
right,
hand in hand.
right. I mean, it's just the obvious choice, right? Yeah. No, I had asked a number of attorneys, said, what should I major in? I'm thinking about going to law school, and they said, really doesn't matter. Just major in something that you can keep your GPA up in and do a good job on the LSAT. And law schools actually appreciate the diversity of different majors. So
Sure.
where not everyone's political science major or something like that.
Well, and it's interesting too because there's really some parallels in web programming and all that stuff to the technical ability of a musician.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different note or whatever, but it's sort of the same creative juice, I guess, that makes a great web programmer, could be found in a musician as well.
Yeah.
Attention to detail or something.
As I was kind of going through it, because I have a little background in web development as well. I'm not fluent in whatever language you want to call it, but I have some background in it, and it kind of reminded me as like playing the piano. You break it down and you keep, okay, this measure I'm doing this measure I'm doing this, and with web development, I mean, like once you kind of done the same function a few times or this or that a few times, it just comes, and it's almost like second nature. Once you've done it 2 or 3 times, you got it figured out. But, okay.
So continue on. So we've gone to school, and we're now in Idaho Falls. You finish your program in music and then go into law. What does that look like?
Yeah. So went to law school at BYU, had a great experience there, and kind of where the story of Code 180 starts is in my second year of law school. With a couple of friends, we started a startup called InstaClerk.
InstaClerk.
Yeah, InstaClerk. So occasionally, lawyers will need legal research help, and they don't necessarily have the time to do it on their own, and so they'll hire a law student called a law clerk to help them with that research.
Doesn't EJ isn't his background in that?
Well, so the guy we're talking about is EJ here at Access Salt Lake, where our podcast studio is held up. He is an attorney. I think he's past clerking, but
no, I think that was his kind of forte.
I think his company did something similar.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We'll have to have you talk to him on the way out.
Yeah. So that's there was a startup that we were doing in law school. It helped connect attorneys with law students to get help with legal research projects and things like that. And none of us knew how to code, but it was something I had been interested in, and we were thinking, to build out the MVP, minimum viable product, and also if we were to hire developers that, I wanted to feel conversant in and feel knowledgeable about that space, about the tech space. And so I started learning how to code my second year of law school, and it was just a total rabbit hole of time.
Isn't it?
Yeah. You think, okay, I'll spend 20 hours, just so I can kind of know the ropes a little bit. And I probably put in 200, 300 hours just getting to the point where I felt like I knew the basics.
Sure.
And that's where, sorry, Ryan.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so at this point, like, I mean, you're in law and you're sort of have taken it upon yourself to do this web programming and things like that, but like, where does the entrepreneurial bit come from? Have you always found yourself to be kind of entrepreneurial? Or, I mean, because not only did you sit down and teach yourself web programming, but you are starting a business. You built this startup. How does all that manifest? Yeah,
so I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always liked to start and create things. In high school, started the high school drum line that wasn't there beforehand, and in undergraduate school, started having different business ideas percolate around in my mind, and I think it just comes from the enjoyment of creating something, taking something that didn't exist in the world before and having an impact on the world in some sort of meaningful way. And so, it's been a goal of mine for a long time before going to law school, before starting to practice at a firm, to someday start creating my own business or startup,
that's really
whatever.
Cool. I mean, they just feel a little bit separate, like the guy who wants to go work at the law firm versus the guy that wants to start a business, they don't seem like the same world. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose there's a lot of parallels, that you learn while you're going through school and all that stuff that, contribute to entrepreneurial knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So, I guess continue with your story. Sorry, we keep interrupting.
No, you're good. You're good.
The walk down memory lane.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Michael.
2 years in, you're working on this software for the clerks. Did you finish it? Did it come to fruition, or was it kind of like a? Yeah,
so we built out an MVP, started generating revenue, but then the 3 founders of InstaClerk, we all got good jobs after law school. I had a clerkship lined up on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals with the judge there, and the opportunities that we had after law school just weren't they were big enough that it didn't make sense to say no to those and continue on with InstaClerk. So we had a good experience with it and kind of wound it down.
But it was up and going and functioning at one point?
Yeah, it
That's
was.
cool.
Yeah, we had a number of attorney clients that we were helping with research and things. And so for me, though, it was really valuable in gaining that experience of, one, what does it feel like to start growing a company and do the sales and the distribution and all of that. But then that's where I picked up the skills in technology that I did, becoming a self-taught programmer. And by the time I got, after my clerkship on the Ninth Circuit, when I started practicing with a law firm, I was part of their mergers and acquisitions group, and they found out that I was a self-taught programmer. And so anytime that we had license agreements come in or things that were specific to software or data privacy, things like that, they would send it my way. And so I kind of naturally started developing a practice in technology law, so to speak.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What language did you write it in?
So at that time is when Node.js came out, and so it was strictly JavaScript application. Yeah.
Node's pretty nice. That's kind of what I've built mine on, is Node and React.
Okay. Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah. So we've got you at BYU Law. You've graduated. You've finished Instaclerks. You were working with. Was it Brown and Loveless?
Yeah, Parr, Brown, Gee, and Loveless.
Okay, and that was the last firm you were with before you went and started Code 180.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for Code 180, and when did that get going?
Yeah, so it actually started as a training for attorneys. So I was 2 years into private practice at Parr, Brown, Gee, and Loveless, and I joined the cyber law section of the Utah Bar. And so the Utah Bar is broken into different sections depending on what practice area you're in, and the sections are a way to get to know other attorneys in that same practice area.
Nice.
And so I joined the cyber law section of the bar, and they knew that I was a self-taught programmer. I was practicing in software law, and so they invited me to give what's called a CLE, a continuing legal education training, to other attorneys. And so I did an hour-long training. It was a mini coding boot camp for attorneys. So the first 40 minutes was, here's the fundamentals of software development. And then the last 20 minutes was, how does that apply to the law, specific to both litigation and transactional work. And so then went into those different principles. And people really enjoyed the mini coding boot camp for attorneys. And so they invited me back to their biggest event of the year, called the Utah iSymposium. Had about 150 attorneys there, and I gave the training there as well. And it just received a lot of interest and positive feedback afterwards. One attorney came up to me afterwards and said he had majored in computer science and is now a patent attorney, and he's been doing this his whole career. And he said, I wish someone had explained software development to me this way when I first started learning. It would have saved me years of confusion, because the way Code 180 teaches it gives people the bird's eye view so they can see the forest for the trees of software development, whereas traditional computer science education just throws you right into the thick of it, and it's sometimes difficult to see the big picture.
Well, that was one thing that I thought, because Ryan and I both sat through the program, and going into it, I was like, okay, we're going to walk out with a functioning app. Sure. You know? And the way you kind of put it out there and walked us through it, it was a very broad overview, but it covered all the basics. And got you kind of, where you're feeling like you've done something when really you've created this cool, like, I made a coffee counter thing, like how many cups of coffee I made.
we have a picture of it.
It's shown up in some of the collateral recently. So, actually, just to sort of elaborate on Mike's point, the thing, or I guess what I took the most out of the Code 180 is because I have a little bit of background in programming. I'm just old enough that I had to learn HTML to build a website in the early days.
Right.
And
with Dreamweaver.
Yeah, right. As that was all coming online, the only way to have a website was to hard code it. Like, there wasn't a way around that back then.
Right.
And so I had some background knowledge, but like what I found was really interesting is when people start getting into programming, you already talked about it earlier too, this idea of kind of the rabbit hole you go down. Like, I mean, it's infinite how deep this hole can be. And so what Code 180 does really well is gives you a high level view, but gives you these core fundamental, little blocks of knowledge. that you can apply quickly right away, and then those foundational concepts will carry you through the rest of programming. So if you start, into other languages or into whatever, you'll have some idea of syntax and how to write code and things like that, without getting caught in the minutia that you might if you just tried to do it all by yourself.
Well, I told Ryan after we sat through your class, I'm like, 180 minutes to get that product. For most programs, you'd spend 180 minutes on loops and arrays. You know, just one portion of one language. You know, and so being able to kind of put it all down into that 180-minute period and walk out with the finished product is kind of, if anything, you're just sparking the creativity for people so they can go and actually have the desire to go back and spend the 180 minutes learning loops and arrays.
Well, and that's the thing, is it gives you the opportunity to go wide, not deep. So
exactly.
you learn a broad swath of things really quickly, where you can start to have an understanding of the general concepts. And then, like Mike's saying, the more you do this, or you might have to learn new skills or whatever to pull off whatever it is you're actually trying to accomplish. But this will give you that core knowledge that you need to move forward. So I think that the way it's designed is really clever.
Yeah, it was great having you guys attend. And if you didn't know, Michael, your picture of your coffee app is like one of the main promotional photos that we use now.
Yeah, that was kind of because I had kind of done a little more.
Yeah, you added
before.
an image to it and everything. It was great.
So mainly just keeping myself busy.
Yeah.
But so your first initial start was with that legal meetup. You were kind of just doing an overview for them.
Yeah.
What kind of spurred you to let's do something with this? Let's create a company.
Yeah. So where it took the next step was BYU Law School expressed interest in it for their law students, and so talking with the dean of BYU Law School there, Dean Gordon Smith, he's a very innovative dean at the law school. Has a big push for innovation and entrepreneurship and technology in the law. They're doing a lot of cool things there. And so a lot of BYU Law students graduate to go either work at tech companies or tech markets or at law firms that represent tech companies. And so they wanted to have a coding for lawyers workshop at the law school. And so it was perfect timing to kind of introduce this concept of Code 180 to the law school. And so we established a formal partnership with BYU Law School, where we now give a Code 180 workshop every semester there.
Nice. For
the law students. And there are professors there that teach classes in blockchain contracts and corpus linguistics and classes that relate to technology and the law. And so those professors require their students to take the workshop, but then the other students, it's open to the student body. And every workshop that we've done there is filled up, and we're now expanding it into other law schools. But that's really where it got its start with the attorney training, and then had a big success at BYU Law School. And from there is where we said, okay, let's make this available to the public. And so we organized it as a Utah L3C. So it's a hybrid between 501c3 and an LLC. And as its mission, Code 180 has its mission in its charter documents is to make coding education accessible. And so that was the idea. Is okay, we've started to make coding education accessible to attorneys and to law students. Now let's open it up to the general public. So we took out the legal principles from the workshop and just made it generally applicable to professionals and students. Anyone who has an interest in learning to speak the language of technology, that's the idea there. And so we've been continuing to give the live workshop. We now have an online version of the workshop available, and we're continuing to just provide it wherever the opportunities are.
Well, and I think, you and I have talked a little bit about this, but I think one of the most important things, or most practical applications for this, is, everybody that works in an office these days is being pushed, having technology shoved down their throats.
Yeah.
I see this personally in our lives. My wife's in education. She teaches at a junior high school here. And so, in the schools, it's all about tech, like how much tech can we shove down their throats? However, the training is really limited. The amount of information you can get from your IT people or the company selling in the new product or whatever it is really limited. And having this foundational knowledge, I think, will help people do their jobs a lot. And so what I like about it is sort of how I described it was the the technical training for the non-technical.
Yep.
Not to say you couldn't be technical or already have that spark to be interested in programming, and maybe this was your entree into that. But for people who aren't, maybe older people or people who've not grown up on technology or grew up around technology, but then now in their workplace they're required to use it. I think that this core set of skills that you could pick up could be really valuable for those people. The folks in their 50s and 60s that are working in department stores or whatever and having to now navigate, new intranets and hardware and software that they use for I don't know, inventory control or whatever it is,
Right.
Like just everything is so much more tech heavy now than it used to be. And it seems like having this foundational knowledge is great. And it honestly seems like infinitely scalable in terms of the type of content that you could offer. So, this initial version of Code 180 is, and I guess there are multiple versions where you could do different things. But,
Yeah.
but I mean, you could expand this model into other things more, right in line with different industries and things like that. I mean, there's really infinite growth on this thing.
Well, just to expound on your what you just said, I think in college for you, didn't you actually have to teach one of your instructors how to use Photoshop?
Yeah. Ours was a Photoshop course.
Well, I mean, so that's the perfect example of a scenario like that, because if you're coming in as a student and you're giving more knowledge than your professor is, that I'm sure in the code world and in lots of like high schools or whatever, a lot of the teachers probably don't know that much about it and are in a position where they're going to have to start teaching it soon.
Right.
So,
in fact, that's actually where we're seeing a big need is there are a lot of fantastic organizations out there like Girls Who Code and Code.org, and they are organizations to promote digital literacy or actual coding knowledge for the upcoming generations. But the problem that they're facing is there's a shortage of adults who feel confident enough in their knowledge of technology to be coaches or mentors in those organizations. And
Sure.
the organizations are telling these adults, saying, you don't have to be a professional programmer, you just need to be there and learn alongside these kids as they learn how to code. But that's where we're seeing one section where we're seeing a lot of demand for Code 180 is the ability to instantly instill confidence inside of adults who aren't coders professionally, but give them the knowledge, the core knowledge that they need to say, okay, I understand this, I'm confident with it, I can help children learn how to code.
Sure.
Because it's something that I say frequently. Code 180 is not so much about teaching a skill. If you want to develop the skill of coding, you can go to a coding boot camp, you can go to Pluralsight. There's lots of great resources to develop the skill, which takes a lot of time to do, but there's a lot of resources out there. What Code 180 is doing is it's helping share knowledge, helping people
Sure.
develop knowledge so that they can be conversant in this, but it's not about actually landing the job. It's a great introduction if you want to go into a coding boot camp or something like that, but in 180 minutes someone leaves and they can speak the language now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective because, like, especially right now, the people who are a little older, 40s, 50s, 60s that are still in the workforce, if they didn't learn programming, when it started kind of evolving, then they've missed that boat,
Right.
and a lot of people are learning programming like in very non-traditional ways. They're using platforms like Pluralsight or Treehouse or other places like that to learn their programming, or YouTube, like the example you gave earlier.
Right.
And they're not going to college and learning programming. They're just becoming programmers. And so you don't have a huge workforce of people who went to school to become a programmer and then moved into being an educator. And so you've got people kind of going, around the education system to learn programming.
Right.
Now I guess, we're getting to an era where we'll start to see more of that. People who've gone through programs, gone through schools, and who are starting to evolve into being educators. But right now we're in kind of this weird no man's land where, there's a definite need for this kind of training because people just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting. But
Yeah.
I think that's a cool perspective, this idea of sharing the education and instilling confidence as much as anything, giving people the, I think you said technological literacy, so they can actually speak in the terms of the people. Maybe they don't do the programming, but just to be able to have a conversation about what needs to be done in a way that you can frame the conversation around what's real and what can actually be facilitated by a programmer. versus, just saying, oh, well, I would love it if it just did this, that, and the other thing, even though the reality is it can't do any of those.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. So something that you hear a lot in the world of business is accounting is the language of business. So, you don't have to be a CPA or have an accounting degree to know that understanding the fundamentals of accounting, the difference between revenue and profit and what is a balance sheet, what is an income statement. Those are basic things, basic principles that if you're in business, it's good to understand those fundamentals. And so similar thing, if you are not a developer, but you're in a tech market and working on the periphery of developers, whether you're in law or finance or project management, whatever it may be, or in education, just like accounting is the language of business, coding is the language of technology. And honestly, before Code 180, there was no clear solution to say, let's get you up to speed just so that you can speak that language. So yeah. So it's been great. It feels meaningful. It's great to teach the workshops. We now have a couple of other instructors that I've been training.
That was going to be one of my next questions.
Okay, yeah.
Where do you see this going? How are you going to send out people to do that? And obviously you are. How's that going as far as taking on instructors? Is that kind of a pain?
No, so for me, it's great to be able to have the help of other people. So every workshop that we teach, we try to have a couple of assistant instructors there because, as you guys experience, it's very hands-on and people will have typos in their codes, and so you need people there.
Missed the semicolon.
Right, yeah. But then by way of training other instructors to give the workshop, it's been instructive for me to see, how can this scale, but then it hasn't been hard to find the right people because people will take the workshop and they'll see and understand the vision of this. And, there are experienced developers who want to be involved in becoming an instructor. And so we have a couple of great people on board. The first one was Blake Moss. His wife was in one of the first BYU Law School workshops as a law student there. And he's doing his Master's of Computer Science at BYU. And so he's been teaching the workshops with me and is now to the point where, he's comfortable with the curriculum. And so the path forward for Code 180 is continuing to give these live workshops at law schools, to the public, to private tech companies, business schools. But then there's also other ways of delivering the content, such as an online platform or creating a textbook for business professors or other college professors to give it as an assignment. It's essentially a turnkey computer science assignment for business students or other non-technical students that will then have access to the online course. So that's...
Yeah, I think you guys set up a Slack channel and everything so that they can ask questions if they have problems as they're going along. Looks like you're kind of getting it all kind of dialed in.
Yeah.
Going the way you want to go, and I'm excited for you to see, what the next couple of years will bring.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? What are you trying to... Do you have like a 5-year goal kind of set up, or is it just kind of keep going and hope it grows?
Yeah. I'd say the goal is like I said, that with the mission of Code 180 being to make coding education accessible, I think Code 180 will have clearly accomplished its mission when you don't have people saying, I really wish I knew how to code, but there's no clear, easy way. There's so many barriers to entry, time, money, and complexity that prohibit people from getting that knowledge that they need. And I hope that 5 years from now that Code 180 is more people know about it. And I think it's too much to say everyone should learn how to code, because for lots of people it just really does not impact their life at all. But it's not too much to say everyone should have the opportunity to learn how to code if they want to. And just having that be accessible to people is the goal. So if we could just have it become kind of mainstream in the United States, that would be a big success. But then it's something that other countries and places of the world will need.
So let's talk a little bit about how the program itself works. So if somebody's looking to engage Code 180, because there are a few different facets of the way this works. There's the student direct model where the student signs up to join the program. There's the, corporate model where you're selling this into organizations and things like that, where they can train their employees using your service. There's the philanthropic angle of this, where you're helping out, it may be through the help of a corporate sponsor or something. You're able to facilitate a program for free or at very discounted rates or whatever for attendees. So let's talk a little bit about that, like sort of how does this actually manifest and how one might actually engage with you?
Yeah, so we have several different customers, so to speak. The first is the individual, which would have been someone like me saying, I want to know how to code. Where do I start? And so that's the primary purpose of the online course is that you can go to code180.org and you can take the online course, and it's verbatim what the live course is. Other ways that people can access it is if you're an institution that has a tech focus and you want your non-technological people to be conversant in tech with your tech people, that'd be companies like Adobe or Lucid or these other tech companies that we have here in Utah. And yeah, Ryan, like you were saying, we give the private trainings there. It would be nice if we could just make it free for the whole world, but we're trying to find that balance between finding sponsors to make it available to particular demographics. That in the case of the recent workshops that we're doing, Dev Mountain is sponsoring free public workshops here in Utah.
Nice.
And so we're doing those on a monthly basis. And so, yeah, how we deliver it, how we distribute Code 180 is the biggest thing, the biggest challenge that Code 180 has right now is we have this content, we have this curriculum that people really enjoy, it provides value, but that's the million-dollar question is how do you deliver this and make it available to people? And so it's the more time and effort we put into it, the more people are hearing about it. And just recently we started speaking with a artificial intelligence company that wants to get it in front of data analytics professionals and business students, and so they're interested in sponsoring workshops at business schools and MBA schools. And so it's really just a matter of finding those different interests and aligning those interests so that we can together accomplish this mission.
Speaking of curriculum, do you see your curriculum expanding to more in-depth down the road, or are you kind of sticking to the overall kind of approach and just kind of keep it broad for everyone, or do you actually you could go in depth on PHP and JavaScript and all that stuff? That's
a good question. So after every workshop, as you guys experienced, we hand out feedback forms and we ask questions. And one of the questions that we ask is, would you be interested in follow-on content that dives deeper into a particular topic? And if so, what sort of topics would you be interested in? And 2/3 of people say that they would be interested in follow-on in-depth content. And so whether that's things like blockchain or data science or even just additional projects to build out their programming experience, there's a definite interest for that. And so long-term, where we see Code 180 at is just like you have platforms like Pluralsight, which are continuing education for technical professionals. We would like to build out code180.org as a platform for non-technical people to become knowledgeable about tech, which is how Ryan described Code 180, which is very accurate to the big mission. And so, yeah, Code 180 is kind of the starting point to say, okay, let's get you up to speed in speaking the language of technology so you can understand the 8 elements of programming. But once you can speak that language, now you can really dive deeper and understand at a more valuable level things like system administration or any of these other topics like agile development for business professionals. But before you understand the fundamentals of coding, there's only so much that you could understand about blockchain or these other important technologies that are emerging. And so, yeah, definitely as Code 180 grows, we'll be producing more content, both live workshops and online content.
Nice.
Well, what are you finding? You mentioned this feedback form and stuff like that. What kinds of feedback are you getting on this, in terms of the program, the way people are applying this knowledge? So do you have any understanding or any idea how that's working for people, what they're taking this knowledge and doing with it after they've left the program?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on which group we're teaching. The general public, you have all different sorts of people attend that, but the workshops that we give at private companies and at the schools, you can see a common thread in the feedback. And so for the private companies, it was exciting to see the employees at these tech companies in their feedback. There's a consistent theme of, oh, this is fantastic. I now know how to communicate with the developers so that when I submit a development request or something, I don't feel like a 4-year-old, saying, here's what we need to have done. They understand APIs. They understand, they can articulate their request better. And so communication is the big takeaway for workshop participants that are at tech companies. And then the big value for students at BYU Law School and the other schools where we're giving it is two things. One, there's still the communication aspect there to the extent that they're planning on going into the tech industry. But then a lot of students don't know what they want to do. And this kind of opens their eyes to the possibilities of, I didn't know I could be a software attorney, or that, some people after about for the public workshops that we do, about 10 to 20% of people who take the workshop say that they're specifically interested in becoming a professional developer.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
so it's kind of an on-ramp for those people. We have some scholarships available from different coding boot camps for Code 180 graduates.
Oh, cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
So you've mentioned blockchain a few times.
Yeah. It's kind of a buzzword that people talk about, but buzzwords exist because people don't fully understand it. And,
sure.
Yeah.
I've started doing a little bit of research on it. Do you guys have a course already put together for blockchain, or is it in development right now?
Yeah, so we've talked about putting one together, and it will just be a matter of demand and
sure.
When people want to take that course. But yeah, it's something that blockchain's an important technology. It's not going to go away.
I only see it growing, and I'm interested to see the applications and how you can use it in different things. Farms will get it to where they can track seeds with blockchain, and that to me is just like, really? Okay.
Right.
So, that's one aspect, and it's gonna be huge, I think. So
yeah. So check back with me in a year or two, and we might have a course on that.
Sure.
Okay, so where to from here? We've talked a little bit about some future plans and things like that, but what's happening in the immediate future of Code 180? For people in the Salt Lake area, Salt Lake, Lehigh, there's regular sessions and things happening around here. Have you guys begun doing sessions like out of town, things like that? Are you being called off to exotic locations to do the workshops?
Yeah, so those things are starting to emerge in the immediate future. We're looking to the fall academic semester that's starting, and we're wanting to have a textbook available for professors to use. We are looking to expand it outside of Utah. We've been talking with Stanford Law School. They're creating a Coding for Lawyers course at their law school, and so it looks like we'll be heading out there to speak to their CodeX group on what Code 180 has done at BYU Law School, and kind of share our experiences and knowledge with them as they create their coding curriculum, and may have an opportunity there to help them develop that.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then as far as the platform going, when we first met each other, you didn't have this online course.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So you were doing these workshops and having pretty decent success in the workshops. Now you can do this online. What's that experience like for people?
What's the experience like for the online?
Yeah, just to be able to use the online platform versus the workshop.
So, they both have their pros and cons. The nice thing about the live workshop is you just have to show up. It doesn't feel like you have to do any work to do a live workshop, because you go and
I had to download Sublime. I had to do all that beforehand.
There is some pre-course work. But at the same time, the live workshop, it's very intense. It's a lot of information in 3 hours. And so that's why what we do now is everyone who takes the online workshop, we give them access to the online course, so that if they feel the need to review anything, they can do that. But then the positives for just starting with the online course is you can take it at your own pace. like Michael mentioned, there's the Slack channel where you can, if ever you have questions, if you get stuck, because that was one of the big questions that we had as well in the live workshop. About 1/3 of people have typos in their code as they're going through, and if you don't really have some sort of instructor to help you resolve that issue, you can
spend the whole 180 minutes finding the missing.
Exactly, finding the missing, the additional semicolon or something that you added. Yeah. The online course, you can take it at your own pace. But then also a difference now that we've just recently implemented is there's in the live workshop we teach a simpler application. It was the habit tracker app that you guys took. But on the online course, it's actually a more in-depth, complicated application that you create. It's a to-do list app, and
nice.
It goes more into depth into the 8 elements of programming, and that's because there's more time. On the online course, there's actually 180 minutes of full content, whereas in the live version, we have to allow time for a break. We have to allow time for starting late.
Sure.
And so that allows for the online course to
get
have
a little bit deeper.
more substance. And so
and they can work at their own speed too. So granted, it's 180 minutes of content, but it could take them 3 hours to complete.
Right.
Or longer, whatever they need. Yeah. And how does that work? So do you watch a video and take a test, or how does the actual process work? Is it just consuming video content and doing code challenges, or?
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's verbatim. Apart from doing a different project, it tracks with the live workshop, and then it's a video lecture series. So if you've taken other online courses where it's a screencast of I'm the instructor for the online workshop. It's a screencast of my computer, and we walk through and you learn the 8 elements of programming, and then you do the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for your application. And
that's awesome. Well, no, I think that this is all really exciting technology. And what do you think? So this is a question we ask a bunch of people. I don't know if you and I have gotten into it before, but because you're in this space, I'll ask. We've had Ryan Carson, CEO of Treehouse, on before, and he's Treehouse, for people who don't know, is an online platform strictly for learning development skills. They have some business and some other things too.
But their main focus is
coding and programming.
And I'll give a shout out for them. Treehouse is they're the main platform that I used in law school to learn how to code.
Likewise, same.
They have a really nice platform. It's really great, and Ryan was a great guest on this show and really influential actually for us. So that's awesome. So much love to all those guys.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we got into with him is sort of what's the future of education. And the reason I ask you, because you're starting to dip a toe into this, but a lot of us, especially those of us that are a little bit older, went probably more traditional routes. We went to high school, and then we went to college, and then we entered the workforce and blah blah blah. And now a lot of people are circumventing that, especially in these types of skills. Where they're skipping college altogether, or or taking a little bit of college and then going right into programming, or whatever it is. So, just as a hypothetical, or just what are your thoughts on sort of the future of sort of American education? Like, do courses like Code 180, and maybe as it grows and becomes a deeper knowledge base, do applications like Code 180 and Pluralsight and Treehouse and lynda.com and other places like that, does that become the formal education in the future?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think that's a great topic. I think there's a bit of a parallel between what I saw in my music education and what you see in professions like software development, where a degree in music certainly counts for something. I mean, it demonstrates that you have a commitment to what you're doing. But at the end of the day, in the music industry, people, they want to know, can you play?
Yep.
Are you skilled at your instrument and skilled at your craft?
Chops.
Yeah, do you have the chops? They want to see your portfolio, so to speak. And so in software development, that's why coding boot camps have become popular. At the end of the day, it's really just, can you code? What's your portfolio? And so it's been interesting for me to get into this space and kind of see there's not a clear answer yet, because as valuable as coding boot camps are, there's still the value of a 4-year degree or a master's degree or a professional degree has yet to be entirely unseated by the alternative education route. And so I think you're going to see, I think both will continue to exist where it will depend on the job, will depend on, what it is an individual is wanting to accomplish. Even with the coding boot camps, you talk to anyone who's gone to a coding boot camp, and they're not a guarantee for a solid job. Though the coding boot camps that do guarantee you a job afterwards, are difficult to get into. And so at some point, individuals have to demonstrate hustle and the ability to work hard and the ability to do good at their craft. And so you need to demonstrate that. I guess that's really what it comes down to is one way or another, you need to demonstrate to employers and to the market, whether it be through a degree or through an equivalent amount of experience, to say, I'm good at what I'm doing. And so I guess at the end of the day, that's what people care about is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people, maybe in technical fields or things like this, because I'm sure like traditional universities will have a hard time keeping up with changing technologies and things like that. But, if you're going to be a school teacher, you probably still need to go to college. For example, you can't just teach yourself to be a school teacher online somehow.
Or a lawyer or a civil engineer.
So you're probably right. There's probably a place for both, or even aspects of each where, maybe you just have a two-year degree, doing just general academia, and then the rest of your career is just spent learning programming or, whatever. Maybe there's some weird hybrids we don't even know about yet. But, So, but anyway, I think it's interesting, and I always like to pick the brains of people that are sort of in this replacing education space or augmenting maybe education space, because I just think that we're in a weird time where things are changing rapidly.
Yeah, and I think because of that, the technologies today that you have that are important are drastically different than they were even just 5 years ago, and 5 years from now will be leaps and bounds ahead of where we're at now. And so I think that you kind of touched on this a little bit. It's a commonality that I see between the law and in programming. You go to law school, they don't teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. They don't actually teach you the skills to be a lawyer, because you can't do that. You can't have someone memorize all of the law that they need to know. The most that they can do in law school is teach you the critical thinking skills and how to work with the law and understand the law generally, such that when you're in practice, you know how to, whatever legal issue it is that you're working on, how to
do the research
and understand the law and produce the work product that you need to produce. It's the same way in software development. Software development is not about memorization or even understanding particular technology so much as it is having the skill set and the attitude necessary to stay up to date. To figure it out. Exactly. It's whoever learns. It's about the ability to learn and work in that space. And I think that's one difference that you see between coding boot camps is coding boot camps say, these are the hot technologies right now. We're going to get you up to speed on them in 12 weeks, and you'll be proficient at them. And that's fantastic. That, the kids who take that and hustle, they get good jobs. But those who will have a strong long-term career are those who realize that it's not about the current technologies and just knowing those. They need to have a deeper skill set, which is the ability to learn and stay up to date. And so if you can get that at a coding boot camp, then that's great. And if you can demonstrate that to the market, then you'll have a good career in that. Otherwise, the traditional 4-year path, I'd say that's one of the differences between the coding boot camps and the traditional academic path is the coding boot camps are focusing on, let's teach you the practical skills and technology, and the traditional academic path is saying, well, let's focus on the broader principles, because you can learn the technologies on your own. And so there's pros and cons there. I mean, one's really practical and one's more high level principle based.
For example, Eric, we've had him on the show before. Eric Merrill, I can't remember which show number, but he's got a degree in computer science, and I mean, like currently the hot, like React, Node.js, those are like what's trending right now. But he's had to jump in a few projects recently that are just old PHP websites. And having his history and his knowledge, he's able to go back and do stuff that a lot of people, Granted, PHP is pretty common. A lot of people know it, but just his background, he can go in and work on more platforms just because he knows it. And he says, yeah, I'll jump in it. It might take a day or two to kind of figure it out and get caught up to speed. But once he kind of has it kind of dialed in, same kind of concepts and overall. So it's good to have a broad understanding and be able to just jump around like that and work on older projects just from that knowledge.
Well, one thing that I'll add to that is it's neat to see what coding boot camps like Lambda School are doing, where they're recognizing that one thing that is definitely broken in our traditional education system is how it's funded. Now, I mean,
sure.
the tuition and student debt is just astronomical now, and so and schools on that traditional model where you pay up front for your education, they're not invested necessarily in your success. It doesn't really matter too much if you get a job. And so where Lambda School and
is
other
that the one where they're actually taking a percentage of your pay for the first 2 years?
So you don't pay anything to go there. And so because of that, it's a harder school to get into because they're investing in you. They're trusting that you're going to have the hustle and the wherewithal to become a good developer. And then it's an income sharing model where I think that traditional schools could take note of that.
Oh yeah, can you imagine being a welder and not having to up front to go through the course and then just kind of take a 10%, 5%, whatever your salary is, just to pay for your education and back pay.
And it's a substantial difference because then the school is invested in your success. The school succeeds when you succeed in getting a job, and it's not just here's your degree. Good luck.
Yeah.
You have $40,000
pay us back
in
down.
debt, and you have an art degree.
Time's ticking. Let's do this.
yeah, exactly.
So. Well, no, I think we are getting to a point of almost like a real crisis around this student debt and all that. I mean, like people like my wife, for example, again, a teacher, an educator, and she's doing okay now. She's got her master's in a little, so she's doing all right as far as educators go, but took a long time, and the only way for her to advance is to take more school.
Yeah.
So, like she just recently, and this is the big joke in our family right now, she recently finished her master's, and the raise she got for her master's was made up for about $50 a month. So not even enough to cover the new student loan payment.
Yeah.
And so, however, it's a requirement of her profession to continue to grow. You've got to keep leveling up,
Right.
So, at this point, like, how feasible is it for an educator to continue doing that? And, so she's got whatever it works out to be, $60,000, $70,000 in student loan debt. And, she's been teaching for 12 years now. And so it's like, that's not a great way to set up your workforce for life or for anything else. And so I think that the model that the Lambda guys are using is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if it would be applicable to everybody. You might find schools backing off real quick when they were trying to invest in a teacher's degree, or a public servant's degree, or what's the one I'm thinking of, like poli-sci or something.
Yeah.
It'd be awful hard for a school to invest in that because they know you're not going to come out of school making a lot of money.
Right.
Poli-sci,
And so it would get a little bit tricky. But I think that some variation of that, even if it was just for some programs or whatever, I think would be really useful in trying to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So because it's definitely a bigger ongoing issue, and I don't know how to make it go away.
Right. Okay, so I guess in parting shots, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so they can find out about Code 180 at code180.org, code180.org. And then me personally, I'm active on LinkedIn. You can find me at Derek Parry. If you just search Derek Parry, DEREK PARRY.
Yep.
Most Parrys are PE, but we are PA. Yeah. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on and making the time to do the show today. We're really excited to have you on, and it's been kind of a conversation in the making for a while. So grateful to have you here and to talk about this. I think that what Code 180 is doing is really valuable and going to be really key for people in the future as we start to, evolve in education and evolve in skill sets, even at, higher levels if you have no intention of becoming a programmer, but you just need to have some fundamental knowledge so that you can excel in your own position. I think that all of this is going to be really valuable going forward.
Well, and Ryan, thank you for your help being on the board of advisors. It's been great having your support with that.
Yep, I'm super grateful for the chance. Like, I really enjoy it, and I think it's a great program. So everybody check it out. It's code180.org. Once again, CODE180.org. And go check it out. You can take the online course today, and there's also plenty of in-person sessions running around. So if you'd like to follow them, I guess, do you guys publish that kind of thing on social media?
Yeah. So active on Facebook. Eventually, we'll be active on Instagram once I figure that out. But we publish it on Facebook.
Perfect. Okay. So maybe find them on. Would it be Code 180's profile on Facebook?
Yep. Code 180.
So cool. So follow them on Facebook, and then you'll be in the know as far as local sessions. Sometimes, as we mentioned, they'll have a corporate sponsor, and you can go attend, at a very reasonable rate, cheap or free.
Yep.
And there's some really good opportunity to take this program and get an understanding for what it is, and then maybe you can contribute to it down the road. So that's awesome. So without anything else, thanks everybody who tuned in on the live stream, and thanks so much, Derek, for coming by.
Yeah, thank you guys.